Casey counts them down.
Now, during the 2 years he was in the Army, Elvis Presley didn't record any new music. But in the case of a newcomer to the survey, the Army was where his career got started. Most musicians get started in clubs and garage bands, but not Shawn Mullins. You see, Shawn came from a military family. His father had been an Army officer, and his brother had been in the Navy. And so when Shawn was old enough, he enrolled in North Georgia College, a school run by the military. When he graduated, he became a commissioned officer in the Army Airborne Infantry, stationed at Fort Benning. While he was there, he discovered that his privileges as an officer included using the base recording studio, something he quickly took advantage of. In fact, Shawn recorded 2 whole albums while he was an officer and released them on his own label. After his discharge, Shawn recorded 3 more albums on his own and started sending songs to local radio stations. And one of those tunes earned him a record deal. The same song that jumped 6 big notches to number 18 in this week's survey. Here's Shawn Mullins on American Top 40 with Lullaby.
She grew up with the children of the stars.
American Top 40.
And that means we're up to the number 1 song in the USA on American Top 40. It's by a newcomer who went to a high school career day to hear what a young professional musician had to say. 10 years later, he was that musician's opening act. The young student from Atlanta, Georgia, was in the 9th grade at the time, and one of the presentations he attended was by a rising young musician from nearby Emory University. Her name was Amy Ray, and she was part of a popular local duo called Sailors and Ray. The 9th grader was so intrigued by what Amy Ray had to say, he stayed after the presentation to talk to her. And they talked for nearly an hour about what it took to make it in music. Well, in the years that followed, Amy Ray and her partner Emily Salyers found a good deal of success as the folk rock duo called the Indigo Girls. They developed a big following and hit the charts. Over the years, Amy Ray stayed in touch with the young musician she spoke to at that high school presentation. And 10 years after that meeting, the Indigo Girls invited him to work as their opening act. And that was his first big break. And so the young student who went to career day to find a career found one as a professional musician. Now he's gone from opening act to headliner with a song that once again is the biggest hit in the land. The number 1 song in the USA on American Top 40 is Lullaby by Shawn Mullins. And that means we're up to the number 1 song in the USA. It's by a newcomer who got his start in music at the age of 4, thanks to a gift from his grandfather that the rest of his family just hated. This musician grew up in a middle-class family in Atlanta, Georgia, and his father worked for the railroad. His mom was a school teacher. This man says they lived a relatively quiet life until his 4th birthday. That was when his grandfather, in a kindly gesture, gave this young boy a birthday gift, a miniature set of drums. From then on, that was the only sound heard in this house. This lad would get up in the morning and start beating his drums, wouldn't stop until it became nighttime. He says it made the rest of his family go crazy. But he loved to make music, and playing the drums inspired him to learn to play other instruments, including the piano, the guitar, the bass, and the cello, all of which he plays to this day on the many albums he's recorded. And now the musician whose inspiration began with the beating of a drum is drumming and singing on a song that once again is the biggest hit in the land. The number 1 song in the USA on American Top 40 for the 6th week in a row is Lullaby by Shawn Mullins.
They hung out with folks like Dennis Hopper, Bob Seger, and Sonny and Cher.
The hits from coast to coast.
I'm Steve Street for Casey Kasem. Dropping 2 notches to number 4 is Shawn Mullins, a singer and songwriter who prefers playing an acoustic guitar over an electric guitar. He says, quote, "Maybe it's because I don't play the electric guitar very well, but I've always been partial to the acoustic. I like the sound of the wood and the way it feels against my body." Here's Shawn strumming that acoustic guitar on his recent number 1, Lullaby.
I sing to her a lullaby.
Every week, American Top 40's heard coast to coast and around the world on great radio stations like Q94, Today's Hit Music, Richmond, Virginia, K-Hits 107.1, Texarkana, Arkansas, Texas, Wolf 98, Alaska's Best Mix, Fairbanks, Alaska, and today's Best Music, Star 105.7, Binghamton, New York. Now, easing down 3 notches is a singer from Atlanta, Georgia, Shawn Mullins, who recently proposed to his longtime girlfriend in Paris, France. And she said, "We." Here's Shawn at number 26 with his debut smash, Lullaby.
Everything's gonna be alright. Rockabye. The hits from coast to coast.
We're counting down to the number 1 song in the USA. Slipping a notch to number 27 is a recent number 1 for Shawn Mullins, an artist who says the greatest compliment he ever received was from actor and songwriter Chris Christopherson. Shawn had met Chris at a memorial march for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he gave Chris a cassette of his songs. A year later, out of the blue, Chris called him up and said, "I just want to tell you I really loved your stuff." Shawn says, "If I live to be 100, it'll still be the most incredible gift I've ever gotten." Unquote. Here's Shawn Mullins singing Lullaby.
Rockabye.
America's Top Hits.
This week back in 1998, one of the top hits in the USA was Lullaby. It's by a singer who spent a decade selling his albums out of a van. Shawn Mullins recorded his first album in the Bass Music Studio when he was serving in the U.S. Army. He got no response from record companies he sent the album to, so he decided to start his own record company. He called it SMG Records, and he didn't put out just one album on SMG, he put out 7 albums. He also booked himself into small clubs, and after his shows, he'd sell copies of his albums from his van parked in front of those clubs. He says, "Tell people in the music business you've sold 1,000 copies of an album and they'll look at you with pity. But for me, it was great." Still, when an offer came along from a major label, he couldn't turn it down. And that gave Shawn Mullins the national recognition to score with one of the top hits in the USA this week back in 1998. Here's Lullaby. This week back in 1998, that was one of the top hits in the USA, Shawn Mullins with Lullaby.
American Top 20.